So in this series on drawing near to Christ, we're going to look at part 1 of 4, which is to love God. And speaking on loving God, we're going to look at a beloved writer whose name is Saint Bernard of Clairvaux. He was born in 1090 AD, and he wrote during a very important time where there was a lot of disagreement in the church. It was the time of the Crusades. A lot of things were happening, and in my opinion, from my readings in this time frame, it's almost like some have lost the idea of what it means to love God. Similar to today, I mentioned in the introduction that in today's day and age, many of us spend our days busy, occupied. We maybe hear about God, we learn about God, but we, as people who experience Him for ourselves and have that one-on-one encounter with Him, it's quite rare to find people who do that. And so I'm going to give you St. Bernard's 4 degrees of love. The reason I think this is important is because you can kind of almost, if you look at it carefully, you can decide where am I on this, in the level of degrees of loving God. So I'm going to describe them for you, and you can always look in the show notes and see where I'm taking this from. It's from a particular book, and I'll put that information in the notes below. So the first degree, the beginning point for us, we love God for our own sake. This looks like loving God for what I can get out of it. It would be like the kid who gets in trouble at school and he's headed to the principal's office and he says, God, if you're real, help me out of this. And if you help me out of this, I'll do stuff for you. I'll love you. And then the kid maybe gets in trouble a little bit, and then he just goes back. He doesn't end up loving God. But many of us get stuck in this area where we think that we love God because it's for what we can get out of it. And, that's okay. That's a place to start. I believe that God wants us to go on a little bit deeper and further than that. So first degree is we love God for our own sake. Second degree, and I think this is somewhere many of us get stuck. This is a stage that we get stuck on as well. So we love God because we realize that He's good to us. So it's almost like instead of Him being this far off person that we choose to love or interact with so that we can get something, we are now responding because we recognize that He has given us good gifts. He has done something well. It would be like me saying, like, God, I love you so much because you gave me a great wife and 3 awesome kids. And, I wouldn't necessarily say, like, that's why I love you, but I'm responding in love because I recognize His goodness. The third degree of love is, it says here, we love God because He is God. So we worship Him in His goodness and in His character, recognizing how amazingly large He is, how worthy of being loved He is. But the thing is, there's still this Him and us responding to Him because we need something, first degree. Responding to Him because He's good, second degree. Loving Him because of who He is. And honestly, I think I've been in this place for quite a long time where I'm just like, even my prayers are, God, I love you because of who you are. Not for what you can do for me, not for what you have done for me, but because of who you are. And I think that's really good. And I mean, sure, it's fine. But there's a 4th degree. And this was a little shocking to me. So I'm going to describe it, and then I'm going to read a quote from St. Bernard. So 4th degree is, the way I would describe it is that it's love that doesn't think about itself. It's not thinking about what I can get. It's not thinking about what I have been given. It's not even thinking about how good He is and how not good I am. Really, it's almost like just becoming one with God. It's this idea of you're loving God and concentrated on loving Him, not for what He's done, could do, or is, but because your heart is completely pointed and directed at Jesus. And that's really the whole point of loving God, is to be less concerned about measuring, have I done good today? Did I pay attention to God today? Did I not? Did I fall? Did I fail? And all this self-analyzing, I really believe that there's a place that's further down the road with God that we can go to. And that is one of recognizing our union with God. That we're no longer separated. We're no longer separated. So this is a quote. And it says here, "Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven." Matthew 6:10. O chaste and holy love, O sweet and gracious affection, O pure and cleansed purpose, thoroughly washed and purged from any admixture of selfishness, and sweetened by contact with the divine will. To reach this state is to become godlike. As a drop of water poured into wine loses itself and takes the color and savor of wine, or as a bar of iron heated red hot becomes like fire itself, forgetting its own nature, or as the air, radiant with sunbeams, seems not so much to be illuminated as to be light itself. So in the saints all human affections melt away by some unspeakable transmutation into the will of God. And the joy in this stage, this fourth degree, as St. Bernard would call it, the joy I believe that I'm just beginning to scratch the surface of, and I'm really hoping you will too, is this idea of being distracted much, much less with yourself, with what you need, with even the good things you're doing. I mean, as human beings, we're always like measure, like, wow, I did such a good job at that, or I'm doing so well in this area, or I haven't fallen over here. And we get thinking about us. And really what God wants us to do is think about Him and worship Him. I heard one time someone said, well, isn't it kind of egotistical of God to ask us to worship Him, or to tell us to worship Him? And this person answered, no, because God knows that we become like the thing we worship. And so, of course, He wants us to become like Him. Of course, He wants us to lose ourselves and our brokenness in the love of God, in His love, in His arms. And so, and ultimately, we're called here to the world to be representations of Christ, to be His ambassadors to those who don't know Him. And how can we represent Him if we're stuck back in first-degree love or second-degree love? My prayer for us is that as we recognize who He is, and as we saturate ourselves with His love and His word, that we will begin to overflow from a place, yes, of what we need, and yes, we love Him for what He's done, and yes, we love Him because of who He is, but that we will begin to actually stop thinking about needing to love Him and just love Him instinctually. Some follow-up questions we can ask ourselves on loving God really are, what stage am I at on a regular basis? And once you've determined what stage you're at, let's say you're at stage 2, where you love God because He's good to you and He's given you good things. Ask yourself, what attitudes can you adopt to move from that stage to the next stage, which is loving God because of who He is? And likewise, for if you're at the first degree or you're at the third degree, ask yourself the question, what attitudes can I adopt, or what habits can I adopt to bring me from this stage to the next stage? One of the things I would encourage you to look at is your prayer life. How do you communicate with God? Do you regularly talk about what He needs to do for you? Are you usually thanking Him for what He has done? Do you usually thank Him or talk to Him about who He is? And those kind of indicators can help you understand what stage you're at. But I encourage you to dig into that and then work with God to move to the next layer, the next degree of loving Him. The goal isn't to think about yourself and measure yourself in the love of God. The goal really is to simply be overflowing with love for God, love from God for others, and walk in that, basically becoming the love of God on earth. So God bless you. We'll see you in part 2.